Hello, everybody, and welcome to our live webinar today, Data Protection and Microsoft Teams Keep Control of Your Data while taking advantage of the cloud. My name is Oliver Kleindienst, and I work here at Rohde & Schwarz Cybersecurity in digital marketing. We're happy that we have so many attendants today. It's great to see that that topic really is out of interest for many. Just to let you know, we won't be using any webcams today, just to offer you a better quality of the presentation, and because some of us are connected via home office. Before we start with the presentation, I would like to give you some organizational details. We will record the webinar, so you have the chance to watch the recording just after we send you the email in the next couple of days. We're more than happy to receive all of your questions, but just to have like a better presentation, we will answer them at the end of our live session. Our presenters today are Jana Unterberg and Robert Rudolph from Rohde & Schwarz Cybersecurity. I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and with that, I hand over to Jana. How are you doing today?
I'm doing quite fine, thank you, and thanks for the introduction, Ollie. And yeah, good afternoon, everybody, to our webinar. As Ollie already mentioned, we won't be seen via video, but you can see our pictures here. And I would like to take this opportunity to also say good afternoon to Robert, to you in Darmstadt. How are you doing?
Yes, hello, Jana. I'm doing fine. My name is Robert. I'm the product marketing manager for cloud security, responsible for the marketing for Trusted Gate, and I'm looking forward to our webinar. Thank you, Jana.
Yeah, thanks. And to make it complete, I would like to introduce myself as well. I'm Jana Unterberg. I'm working in the content department here at Rohde & Schwarz Cybersecurity, and I will be the presenter today during this webinar. And yeah, let's start. Let's just jump right in, and let's start with the agenda. So what can you expect from this webinar? Yeah, as you see here in the first chapter, I will give you just a short introduction towards the status of the digital transformation we are facing right now. In the second chapter, we will talk about Microsoft Teams and their approach towards data security. In the third chapter, we will see for whom it will be interesting to have an additional protection layer for Microsoft Teams' already existing security mechanisms. And in the fourth chapter, this one is actually important to understand the fifth chapter. So we will show you what the difference is between perimeter security and data-centric security. And once we did that, you understand the fifth chapter better, because here we will see how Trusted Gate, who has data-centric security as its basic concept, how it does work with how it works with Trusted Gate, and yeah, what it actually is. And in the last chapter, Robert prepared a demo scenario, and he will show how Microsoft Teams actually works with Trusted Gate. So this is the webinar, and as I already said, just a short introduction, because I found this little picture on social media. Maybe you've seen it as well, and it asks the question, who led the digital transformation of your company? Your CEO, your CTO, or COVID-19? And a lot of people actually answered COVID-19. You might agree with that. And of course, a lot of companies and governmental agencies, they are already in the midst of were already in the midst of the digital transformation. But it seems that most companies and government agencies, they weren't advanced enough. So COVID-19 definitely forced them and is forcing them to implement digitalization on the fast track. And we actually see four dramatic shifts in four areas. The first one is, of course, working from home, as I do now, and you probably, or you might do as well. The second area is the on-demand food and services. They definitely have gone more digital than they have done it before. And the third one, of course, are virtual events, as we have today, since it is not possible to have physical encounters in form of exhibitions, for example. And the fourth area, of course, is the cloud. It already had been in a heavy use, but and it is an enabler. But a lot of people now were kind of forced to use the cloud. But let's speak of the positives first. The cloud, of course, has a lot of great things. You can share data and collaborate on documents in real time. You can overcome physical distances, even short ones. And the third one, of course, already mentioned, digital conferences and meetings are possible with audio and video streaming in the cloud. And if you take a look at Microsoft Teams, the daily user growth, if you compare it to 2019, you had 13 million users per day, and with the status on April 29th, 75 million users. So this is really an exponential growth you can see here. So in July 19th, probably a lot of people still thought, I don't know, I'm not too sure about the cloud. There are too many hindrances. But today you can't ask that question because you need to stay in work, so you use it. So there are definitely disadvantages to the cloud. Before we go into that, I ask you, and Ollie will start up the survey, what disadvantages can arise from the cloud. So Ollie, please start the survey. And I give you 4 answers. You can use multiple answers. So A, external storage takes away users' control over their data. B, you have limited access and permission rights management in the cloud. C, because of leaner clients, lead to poorer end devices. And D, cloud users have no influence on the availability of the service. So we give you a few more minutes, and it took quite some time to give you the answers, so you had time to answer those questions, this question. Ollie, I think that's fine. We can present what you answered, and you said A, B, and D, and of course you are right. These are the areas of conflict, of course. The loss of data control. B, you have limited management options of access and permission rights. And of course, if the service is down, you can't do anything against it. If you look at the answer A, loss of data control, this is probably what most of us fear, actually, is a data leak, because a data leak has these implications. Your brand image might be damaged quite severely. You lose intellectual property, and this combined leads to financial damage, no question. So this is about data security, but there are other areas of conflict as well. And this is when you look at global digitalization, this also has a lot of impact on the data protection. And Robert, you have this nice visualization here.
Yes.
What kind of areas of conflict do we have when we look at data protection?
Sure. Could we? Yeah, great. Because I didn't see the slides before, so we see now. There's actually we can see the development on a global scale. There's digitalization everywhere. Every company, organization is doing it, is organizing it. But at the same time, you have the European data protection as an example for national regulations. So there are a lot of countries with national regulations, and a lot of countries just protect their own personal related data of their citizens. And if you go further, you just see what our companies like Microsoft are doing for this. So they open data centers, for example, in Germany, but they have data centers in all over Europe. They have data centers in all the continents, Asia, and so on. And they also do some kind of certification. So there are a lot of national organizations in Germany, for example, it's the BSI. They just certify certain cloud services. In Germany, it's called C5. In other countries, you have other certifications. So actually, all the countries are trying to get some certifications to their data centers, and providers like Microsoft, they are just really investing to get these certifications. So they have a really high security level. So it's really hard for attackers to get into their IT centers. Maybe it's even harder than in the company's own IT centers. But on the other side, if you're going to the next image, you can see here there is still a problem between the national legislation in every country and the European data protection, for example. So as an example, I just take the Cloud Act in the US. The Cloud Act just tells that anybody who has some issues in the US and an American court is looking for some proofs or other material, and they, for example, can tell Microsoft, you have to give us access to the data. That's the Cloud Act saying, and Microsoft has no choice but give access to this information, and it's not important if this data is in an IT center in the US or in Europe. So actually, there is some kind of difference between what's the target of the data protection of all the countries and the national legislations. And as you know, all the secret agencies, they all also have the let's call it the economy espionage. That means they spy. They have the target to spy on foreign, yes, important industries, and that's very important for all customers in every country to get their data protected against these access from, for example, agencies or external attackers. So that's why we are today talking about how to stay in control of your data.
Yeah, and you always have to consider that. And thanks already for this information. That might be new to you, especially just the Cloud Act you just mentioned. But as already said in the beginning, of course, Microsoft Teams already has a lot of mechanisms in place when it comes to data security. We will jump right into that, but before that, just a little question for you again. Ollie, fire up the survey, please. There we go. Yeah, do you already have Microsoft Teams in place? It's quite an easy question. Yes, no, or we are thinking about it. Just a few more seconds, since it is not that complicated. So Ollie, I think we can close the survey. So let's see what you answered here. Okay, the majority already has it in place. A few say no, and just a really minor part says we are thinking about it. But to all the ones who said yes, you still probably think, man, I still have some qualms about the security question. So that's why we are here today. So we just go on, and Robert, you just want to talk quickly about the data security when it comes to the Azure information protection. Can you introduce that these mechanisms to our viewers, please?
Yes, sure. So if it comes to data protection, so everybody uses, for example, Microsoft 365. They always think about to use, for example, Azure Information Protection. I think it's the most common data protection software solution. And as you can see, there are different levels of data protection with AIP. So first, you can choose the basic encryption. That means everything will be encrypted by Microsoft via AIP. But the key is owned by Microsoft, is handled by Microsoft, is generated by Microsoft. So if you take a look at this basic encryption from a standing point, if you think about, for example, the Cloud Act, it's not enough to save your data from external access, because sometimes Microsoft is forced to give access, and if you don't want to have this situation, you need more protection. The second option is bring your own key. It's called this way because you can generate your own keys. Then you make some kind of contract with Microsoft and you give them the keys, so they're still handled by Microsoft. And so you have to trust in the provider that they handle these keys with care. But again, if there's, for example, a Cloud Act, it's not possible that you really have 100% protection against access from unknown parties. And the third option, actually, this is the only way that AIP grants you full protection from external access. That's called hold your own key. That means you have your keys and all your data is already encrypted before you upload it into the cloud, to SharePoint, to Teams or any other services. But there's a big but. You lose most of the functionality. That means the data is encrypted in the cloud. A lot of things like full text search or versioning or all this kind of functionality isn't working anymore. So actually you have some kind of very expensive cloud storage only. There's no functionality, there's no service anymore. And even Microsoft itself, they are not actively promoting this hold your own key service, because it makes no sense for the customer. So actually we are just adding an additional layer to Azure Information Protection to give you the security of level 3, but to let all the functionality keep working. So yes, Jana, let's see the next slide.
Yeah, and as already said, or if you think those two things, if this is not enough for you, or if you think about the data protection and the Cloud Act, you might think about getting an additional protection layer for Microsoft Teams. And Robert, you just to make it more clear to you, you put down 3 target customer groups. For those, it is important actually to have an additional layer. So maybe you can introduce those 3 target groups.
Yes, sure. So actually, I just collected some of the vertical markets where we have many customers, and I think these are typical use cases. So if you take a look at the verticals, the first one is public. Public offices, public organizations, they're often very strictly regulated with their data handling. That means they are, for example, not allowed to work with personal related data in the cloud because of all the security issues. The data is not allowed to leave the certain regions. For example, if it's an office in France, it's not allowed to leave France. Sometimes it's not even allowed to leave the data centers of the public offices. So many of the public offices still have their own data centers on a big scale, but also for them it's important to go into the cloud, because there are just too many advantages in the cloud, especially now if you have a lot of employees now working from home. So they have to think about how to secure the data, even if they're working in the cloud. The next vertical is healthcare. So if you think about clinics, or hospitals, they are not allowed to store their data outside the hospitals. The doctors are not allowed to use their real name when they are working in the cloud. And they have to have a highly secure data exchange between hospitals because, yes, if this highly sensitive data has a leakage, it's a big problem for this sector. So actually, we have a lot of clients in this sector, the healthcare sector. And in the end, the third example is the enterprises. and they have slightly different requirements than public and healthcare, because for them it's also an economical decision to protect their data, because especially research and development data has to be protected. It's their investment that they have to protect. On the other hand, all the companies who have, for example, in many countries, their offices, they have to comply with the data regulations in each country. So actually, that's a scenario where Trusted Gate can help them too to comply with all the data regulations nationally. And very important, of course, the enterprises have to protect themselves against private and governmental industrial espionage, because that's a big risk. So for many companies who have offices in certain countries, they already know they are a big target for the national secret agencies. So this is an important point for enterprises. So these three sectors, I think, are our target customers. So that's, yes, a very big market for us.
Yeah, and I think they also show the conflict again, right? Because you got the cloud with all the opportunities, but you have a security concept still in place, which is perimeter security, and the cloud calls for a new concept, and this is data-centric security. And we want to go into it in this chapter a bit for you to understand the difference and why you need actually a paradigm shift towards data-centric security when it comes to the cloud. So Robert, can you explain the existing security concept being perimeter security for a bit here?
Yes, sure. So don't be afraid. It looks complicated here, but I mean, you all know this perimeter security. It's already there for several dozen years. So actually, in the old model, you have your own data center on premises. There's the infrastructure, platform, application, and the data. And in front is the firewall to protect you against external attacks. And there's an identity access management, so you can have your usernames and passwords controlled. And actually, the most important point here is that you have everything under control here. So actually, this is already proven for many years, this concept, and it's working, and it will work. But something changed now in the IT with the cloud. So if you see the next slide, here you can see what's happening in the cloud. Actually, it's not that much different from on-premises infrastructure. You also have the infrastructure as a service. You have the platform as a service and the software as a service. But as you heard, there's always as a service. So that means all these things are not anymore in your control. It's actually externally controlled by the cloud provider. So you have to have trust in them. And actually, from a security standpoint, I think all the leading companies like Microsoft, Amazon, Google, even the Alibaba cloud, they have excellent security measures for their cloud platform. They are often certified. For example, in Germany, they have the certifications by the BSI. So from that standpoint, it's fine, but you don't have the control over your environment, over your infrastructure anymore. So the only thing that really belongs to you is the data, and this one has to be protected. And of course, you can fully trust your cloud provider, but for many of our clients, that's not possible. They have to make sure that nobody can access, be it with the Cloud Act or any other national law enforcement or an national spy act, whatever. The data has to be protected, and that's what Trusted Gate is about. Yes, and you see here what's important about the cloud platform is that actually the key point why customers use certain cloud platforms is because of the innovative application. So why do you use Microsoft Azure in most cases? Yeah, because they have Microsoft 365 there. They have Teams there. These are really popular applications. They have really a track of record. For Google, you often use for data analytics, Amazon, artificial intelligence, Alibaba, maybe for e-commerce, and many more. And actually, this is a key point why it's hard to build up your own cloud infrastructure. So maybe in Europe, you have heard of the Gaia initiative. So the Gaia initiative is actually targeting at build up, their own cloud infrastructure. That means you want to be less dependent from foreign providers, but it's really hard because you have the cloud platform, but you don't have the application the customer wants. So our approach is to protect the data regardless on what infrastructure it is. So that means if the data is on Microsoft Azure, it's in the Alibaba cloud, it doesn't matter because the data is protected on any infrastructure.
Yeah, and that sums it up again, right, Robert? This is then the data-centric approach. And this actually then is a combination. If you look at data-centric security, that's a combination of identity management and encryption, right?
That's right. So if you take a look at the history, encryption is really old. It's used for many years. But what we are doing, we are just combining the security of encryption and the usability of cloud services in combination with identity management. So the identity management is still there. So you can have your own identity and access management for Trusted Gate, but you can also, for example, integrate your already used identity access management like the AD. And on the other side, there's the encryption. That means our approach with data-centric security means encryption. So this is the only real protection against internal and external attackers. If they don't have access or only access on encrypted data, it's right now not possible for them to see the content of the data. So I will just explain how we'll do it in detail, but actually we combine both these approaches, identity and access management and encryption, and keep the usability. Yeah, so actually we want to integrate these both things. For example, as we talked today about Microsoft Teams, some Teams user, they want to use Teams, but it shouldn't be too complicated and it shouldn't lose important functionality. So actually, we are even doing it invisible for the user, as I show you.
Yeah, and that was the challenge with Trusted Gate, right? To bring the security and the functionality together. We go into detail just about now because you show now on a theory level now how Trusted Gate is doing that, bringing functionality and security together. So you prepared something for the viewers, Robert. Please explain to us how it works.
Yes. Actually, you can see here how Trusted Gate in general works. So actually in the beginning, you have any file. So for this example, we just chose a Word file because it's common used, but it can also be PDF, picture, video, Excel, whatever. And we take this file and create a called virtual file. We call it virtual file. It's only a placeholder. That means actually it's like a empty piece of paper, just an empty sheet. And you have only certain metadata on it. So you still see it's a Word document. You can still see when it's created. And other metadata, you can use a filter. For example, if you want to have the file name still on it or not, that you can decide for yourself. But what's happening with the real data? The real data is extracted from the Word file and gets encrypted. And in the next step, it gets fragmented. And these fragments of the encrypted files can be stored, for example, in the cloud or on premises. So that means you can decide where to store the data. You can clearly see the advantage. You work with Microsoft 365. So for example, SharePoint online, Teams, SharePoint on premise, whatever. But you can decide for yourself where to store the data. This data gets encrypted and fragmented. So someone maybe ask why it's fragmented, because it's an additional layer of security. You can fragment a file. And for example, if you store at any place 5 of 6 parts, and you have a data leakage and you have only 5 of 6 parts, it's mathematically not possible to defragment, to de-encrypt this file. And the reason why we do this is we already see the quantum computing in the future. I mean, maybe you've heard of Google and so on. So there's a fast, quick development in this area. And if there's really one day quantum computing, it might be possible to decrypt the encryption standards of today. So if we do it with fragments, it's impossible even with quantum computing.
So we're looking ahead, right?
Yeah, we're looking ahead, right?
Yeah.
And if you take a look at the next slide, it's actually 2 levels we've created here. We call the above one business level. And business level means that's what the user sees. So actually, if you work with a Word file and you upload it into Teams or SharePoint, that's what the user is seeing. And the encryption level, what happens in the background, it's completely invisible for the user. That means all the encryption, the fragmentation, and where the file is actually stored, it's not visible for the user. So he can use Teams and Microsoft 365 as he's used to. So this is very important. You don't even have to install any software on the client side. So for the user, there's no change in usability of the cloud services. So that's, I think, it's really a big thing we have here. It's very unique on the market. So you have this high level of security, but without any additional user steps, because we know if some security solution is too complicated for the users, they are not going to use it, and all the security will fail.
Yeah, they find the workarounds then, right?
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. Robert, you before we go into the demo, you also have a use case here. Can you please give some info about this use case here as well to our viewers?
Yes, actually, it's a typical use case for Trusted Gate clients because we are in a highly sensitive area. We can't give you names and references here in public, but this is a company in the biotech area, and they decided to stay completely with the data out of the cloud. They want to use cloud services like Microsoft 365 and Teams, but the CEO decided he wants to have the real data only in his own IT center because he is afraid of, somebody steals R&D data. They do a lot of business with China, so the data has to be really secured. And so in this way, they decided to use Trusted Gate. And so the company employees, actually, they're working with Teams and Office 365, but the actual data is all encrypted and fragmented, stored in their own IT center. So actually no real data is leaving the company. So that's some typical use case that could be the same in a public office or in a hospital. This is, I think, something maybe you can also make use of.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. And as already announced, we are here we reached the demo part. So you viewers, you can see now how Microsoft Teams actually works with Trusted Gate. And before we go on, I give you the control now, Robert. So you should have it now.
Yes, keep in control of your mouse.
Yeah, nice. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
So I will try to give you a real-life example of how Trusted Gate works with Teams. So we created some kind of slideshow. So actually we have here two sides. The left side is an authorized Trusted Gate user within the company. And on the right side, you have an attacker. So actually the authorized Trusted Gate user, its name is Adam, and he belongs to the financial department of his company, and he uses the desktop client of Microsoft Teams. We work with both, so you can use web client or the desktop client. So you can see here, this is Adam. The user interface looks like Teams look. So no additional user steps necessary for working with it. And on the right side, the attacker is called Donald. Donald is a potentially dangerous data collector. So he somehow sneaked into the Teams team. That means he got the credentials for the Azure subscription or for the Microsoft 365 account, maybe with email, or somebody just gave him this information. That's not important, but he's not authorized for using Trusted Gate. So he's using the web client of Teams. So you can see here he's called Donald, and he will wait for the data. So actually, he's not quite interested in the chats, but he wants to see what kind of documents are uploaded or will be uploading right now. And so he just waits in the file section. And so something happens. Adam shares a confident document regarding a new fund. So he says all the important information is in the Excel file, and Adam now uploads the Excel file. He just make it as he always is doing it. He just choose a file and upload it into Teams and share it with his team. So what's happening now on the attacker side? Actually, Donald spots there's a new uploaded document in the file section. He's quite excited about it, but unfortunately he can't recognize what file it is, because the file name is already encrypted. He doesn't know what it is about, but he will try to open it. And he first tries to open it with the Excel desktop client. And what does he see? Actually, he sees nothing. He opens the Excel file, but there's only a placeholder, a dummy text, and yes, Donald is very disappointed, even angry that he doesn't get any information, because in this case, he's not really accessing the Excel file Adam was uploading. He's only access the placeholder, so he has no chance to get the real data. So he even tries it again with Excel Online, but it's the same. He only opens the placeholder, the virtual file, and there's only a dummy text. So actually the data collection mission failed, and there's no deal for Donald this time. We can now see if on the contrary, Adam is opening the Excel file with his Excel desktop client. He has no problem. So he can open it and he can see all the information. He can see all the numbers, and also every authorized Trusted Gate user in the team can do the same. So actually what's important, he can of course also search for documents directly within Teams. For this, we have a Trusted Gate Secure Search as a tab. So he can access it directly from the Teams window. And there he can search for file names, for keywords, and for full text. And you can see here, he's now looking for OMDC. And he see here all the results. So you may ask, why do you have an extra secure search? Why don't you use the Teams search? So it's important to understand what we are doing. For us, it's important that the cloud provider, in this case, Microsoft, never gets any details of your data, never gets access on your data. That means we can't let him do indexing your files. We can't let him do a full text search, because in this way, the data has to be compromised and has to be open to Microsoft. And that's what we want to prevent. So we have our own encrypted search index for all the file. It's within TrustedGate. It's not with Microsoft in this case. So this is the reason why you have a special secure search. But you can see here, it's really easy for Adam. He can open the file and he can see OMDC with the full text search. So actually, it's no problem managing even huge amount of data and files. On the right side, Donald tries his luck with the search in Teams, but of course, there are no results. The reason is he only has access on the placeholders. There's no information in it. Actually, he's only looking for, he could only get some results if he maybe has some parts of the dummy text, but that's not what Donald is looking for. So actually, bad day for Donald, 0 search results. And actually in the future, Donald has to look for targets without the TrustedGate protection.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Robert. Especially the search function, I think definitely adds to the functionality of this whole product, and it's quite unique, right?
It's quite unique, and it's not only the full text search, but we also have, all the functionality like versioning, all the functionality like check in, check out, all the things, all the important workflow functionality for Office documents, and that's a big difference to other encryption solutions. Yeah. We are really unique.
Yeah, and since you already got into detail about that, you just prepared a product portfolio slide here as well. Maybe you would introduce a few of our solutions here.
Yes, so actually I only mentioned the solutions I was mentioning before. Here you can see we are talking today about the solution for Teams. Actually, this is actually also integrating all the solution for Office 365. So you can at the same time protect Teams and SharePoint Online. But we also have a solution for secure data exchange. So I had the example for the hospitals if they need to exchange data. That's possible with our solutions. You can also have secure data rooms. For example, if you want to exchange data with external partners, or partners who are not part of your Teams or your SharePoint subscription. And you see on the right side, we call it secure infrastructure. We have solutions like we call it secure localization. That means that was the enterprise example. If you need to comply with the national data regulations, how can you still centrally manage your, for example, SharePoint Online instances? And that's the way to go. Actually, this is also one important topic that gets more and more, more and more a challenge for global companies. And if you go to the, I still have the control.
No, I got it back.
Oh, okay.
Robert. Yeah,
so it's only virtual control. Actually, what I want to tell you now about, it's called Teams Express solution. So because the situation right now is that many clients were, as Jana told us, in high speed, we're going into the cloud, into Teams. We also now have a similar fast solution called Teams Express. And actually, our target is it to give you as fast as possible a protection for Teams. And we want to ensure your data protection. We will deploy this solution in your Azure subscription. So it's a standardized product, so it can be deployed really quick. I will tell you later about it. And actually, it's a solution. It's already fitting for companies and organizations starting from only 50 users. So that means if you are an organization or a company with not such a huge user base, you can still use the Teams Express solution. It's really a quick solution. And if we go to the next slide, you can see why we call it Express. Actually, it can be deployed within 24 hours. So our support, our professional services will support you to deploy Trusted Gate into your subscription. So actually within one day, your users can securely use Microsoft Teams. And an important part of this campaign is also if you decide until June the 30th this year, customers get a special 50% discount on this solution. That means if you want to have a quick decision, you get a really special discount. That's actually the first time we have such a big discount, but I think it's fitting to the current situation. So because you can decide between a permanent license or subscription, actually you're very flexible to deploy Teams in your organization. And yes, so that's I think is a very attractive offer.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, thanks, Robert. We are actually finished with our part, and now we come to you or the questions you asked. And Olli, how does it look like? Do you got some questions?
Thanks for asking. Actually, we had a couple of questions already dropping in,
Right.
starting from the beginning. I hope I get all of them correctly, but let's maybe start with the first one. I think one of our attendees asked that as long as the service is running, bring your own device is similar to hold your own key for Microsoft software services, and when you access them. And from his point of view, this makes a huge difference and when they terminate the services. And he asks if we see it the same way or if we see it differently.
Yes, of course. I mean, encryption is always about, you know, you have to trust your supplier. So if any supplier, even us, if we decide just to discontinue our service, it's important to have a way out. So actually we have, if you begin with Trusted Gate, we have a mass import tool, so you can have your documents encrypted in one workflow. At the same time, if you want to stop using Trusted Gate, you would be the first, to be honest. But if you want to stop to use Trusted Gate, there's also a mass export tool. So actually, you are not bound to our service. But we want to make sure that your data is secure while you're using Trusted Gate. But of course, you have a way out. And it's also, I think, important to know that you are very flexible with Trusted Gate. So it's a software infrastructure based on microservices. So you can have different instances. You can have an instance in your own IT center. You can have, for example, backup instances in the cloud. So actually, you are responsible for yourself to have it well organized. But if you have it well organized, I think there's a big chance that you will never have any service stop in the history of Trusted Gate.
Thanks, pretty good explained. I think a couple of times, and that came from various persons here, we're asking regarding the things that are not possible with Microsoft SaaS options, where we probably do not offer Trusted Gate solutions. And I think one of them was in connection with emails or Outlook, and maybe you can say something regarding that.
Actually, we support Outlook. We also have a solution for Outlook called Mail Control. That means if somebody sent out confidential information, confidential data to an external partner, it's automatically the email sent out, but the attachment is taken out by Trusted Gate, gets encrypted, gets fragmented, like I explained, and the recipient of the email just has to click a link and authorize himself that he has the right to access this data. And in this way, it's also it's also a kind of internal data leakage protection. So nobody can just send out huge amount of data without anybody knowing and just without protection. So we have it. We have the solution. It's called mail control.
Thanks. Can you say maybe, Robert, a couple of things for the search within SharePoint, for example?
Mm-hmm. No, actually, in SharePoint, it's a little bit different than in Microsoft Teams, because in Microsoft Teams you have a special tab for the secure search. In SharePoint, you just can use the enterprise search of SharePoint. It's part of every SharePoint package on premise or SharePoint Online, and you can use the enterprise search. And actually, it works the same way. The search index is still encrypted by and protected by Trusted Gate, but you don't have any additional button. You just use the enterprise search with all its functionality. It's working really well.
Thanks. And we have the question, is Trusted Gate an appliance or software that need to be installed on the workstations?
Actually, Trusted Gate is server-based software. So that means it has to be installed in a server environment within a network. Actually, it's very flexible where to deploy it. Can be in your own IT center, or for example, Teams Express will use your Azure cloud. You can do a mix of the microservices, for example, all the security-related microservices in your own IT center, and maybe CPU-heavy services like encryption in the cloud. So that's really flexible. So actually, you're not bound to any special servers. It works on Linux. It works on Windows servers. That's no problem. But most important, there's no additional software on the clients, and that's a big relief for the administrators, because there's no additional software. For example, if you have thousands of clients, there's no need for installations on them.
Mm-hmm. Does Trusted Gate works also to secure our emails? Okay, sorry, we had this question already. I think somebody asked if conversations in Teams are not encrypted, only documents.
Yeah, that's right. Right now we are focusing on we call it yes, on files, documents. That's unstructured data. For the structured data like chats, we are preparing something, but right now it's not live. But we are working on it. But actually, most of our clients are mostly concerned about their documents, because the real information is in the documents, and that's why we have this first. But on conversations and chats, we are right now working.
Thanks. Another question came in. How do you use Trusted Gate when your team welcomes users outside of the company?
Yes, that's something. Actually, this is a question we often ask, but many of our clients doesn't realize actually it's not good to have external users for confidential data. You have actually to be protected. But what we can do is we integrate some kind of secure data room for these external users. So that means this is already integrated into SharePoint. So if you have some external users, you can put the data in a secure data room, and the external user can just use a web interface to access this data. And we are right now working the same solution for Teams. It's in the development. And so you also have a secure data room directly within Teams, so you can exchange data. So that's what we are doing right now.
Okay. Does Trusted Gate work with dynamic finance? Not sure if he meant like a specific software.
Actually, we don't have a solution for this yet, but actually, if there's really a high interest in this, we have a kind of generic module that can encrypt many kind of services. For example, we did it with GitHub. Just let us know your use case and we take a look. But could be possible if there's a solution, but we don't have a fixed solution, a box solution for this yet.
Okay. Do we support mobile devices such as Android and iOS smartphones?
Yes, for this actually we have a solution that's called Mobile Access, and actually it's very similar to the secure data exchange with data rooms, but in this way you can, for example, you can define certain documents you want to share on mobile platforms. And Mobile Access is creating kind of encrypted HTML files out of the documents, for example, Word file, Excel file, PDF. And everybody with a HTML5 browser, and I mean that's literally every smartphone right now, can then access the data. You just have to log in with your credentials and have access on the road to confidential documents. So typical use case is if some manager needs an important contract on its way to the airport, he has a way to access this data in the car, for example.
Cool. Another question. Can you configure Trusted Gate in order to have not confidential documents stored in Office 365?
Yes,
and only confidential documents encrypted.
Yeah, that's no problem. We support dynamic encryption. That means you can decide what kind of documents are encrypted and secured and what kind are not. So we can work with keywords. You can also define certain users and roles, certain departments where the documents get encrypted. So actually we are very flexible. We can have a very, very detailed definition, what kind of data is encrypted, what kind of data is not encrypted. It can be based on the document name or on the keyword or on the user role. So yes, you can do it.
Thanks. I think this question comes up every now and then related to Trusted Gate regarding how is our solution stable for the future, specifically probably regarding updates since Microsoft services evolve daily as well.
Yeah, that's a very important point because you can't underestimate it how dynamic the cloud is and how dynamic Microsoft, for example, is working with Microsoft 365. It has a new name already, and with Teams. Actually, we are working steadily. We have a high frequency of updates. We always keep on with Microsoft. We have a partnership with Microsoft. So actually we are a co-selling partner of Microsoft. So we get access to early versions of new updates. And even Microsoft, because they know they have certain customers, they only can accept to work in the cloud if they have a independent security layer like Trusted Gate. So actually we work together with customers. So we are always on par with the development of the cloud solutions like Office 365. So you can be confident that we are always working with the most recent version of Office, Teams, and SharePoint.
Great. How do we make sure that Trusted Gate does not become our single point of failure or like a weak point?
Yeah, no, that's what I told you before. We have certain measures we can take. So, for example, you can have multiple instances where you run Trusted Gate. So if one instance fails, the other one can just get in. For example, for the data, we have an integrated RAID module into Trusted Gate, and that means so for data, if you, for example, store it in a certain cloud service, you can store the same part maybe in another cloud service or in your IT center, so you can spread your data, and so it's possible that even if one cloud service is failing, or even if your IT center is failing with the cloud with the storage, you can still keep working with Trusted Gate. So actually, the whole architecture, how you prevent any failure, it's up to you because you have the complete control of the deployment. We are not a managed service. You can control it yourself, and so that's the best way to make sure it doesn't fail.
Thanks. Another question was what happens to government requests based on court orders to hand over encrypted data?
No, actually, that's what we want to prevent. So if, for example, Cloud Act is requiring Microsoft to give access to data, and they give access to your, for example, your Office 365 subscription, actually, Microsoft only can give the virtual files there, only the dummy text. They don't have access to the real data. And so actually there's no way that the court gets your data without you agree to give the data. And actually that's something what's really also very exciting for Microsoft itself, because in this way they are not responsible for these kind of how to say, processes, because they can say, oh, we don't have any way to get the real data. It's in the customer's IT center, or it's fragmented wherever the customer wants. So you stay in full control of your data, and even a court order can't grant any access if you don't want it.
Perfect. Thanks very much. With that, we actually had our last questions. Many thanks to Jana and Robert for presenting.
Thank you.
As we mentioned at the beginning, we will send you the link to the recording with an email coming up in probably next couple of days. I hope we met your expectations with the webinar. We will answer some of the questions within the emails as well. And yeah, get in touch, stay healthy, and hope to see you in the next presentation, or get in touch maybe in a personal demonstration of Trusted Gate. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Yes, thank you. Goodbye.